What if I were to tell you a story? A story about a person who wasn't even a person at all. He's a professional wrestler, basketball player, baseball player, and a renowned musician. He owns companies, world records, and even once ran for president. This is no ordinary story, because this is not a story about an ordinary cat. Tales of triumphs, failures, and intrigue. Throughout this documentary, we'll go through and explore just a taste of the life and family of the most interesting cat in the world. We will see ups and downs. We will see the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll learn together, grow together. This is about whiskey. This is about women. This is about wrestling. This is the Heow J. Cat Story.
Our story begins in the year 1986, in the small town of Churchill, Tennessee. Located roughly an hour and a half northeast of Knoxville, Churchill is a part of the Tri-Cities region, a suburb of Kingsport, an area known for many things, such as Eastman Chemical Factory, beautiful mountain views, and many great restaurants such as Pal's, Moto's, and many more. The exact origin of Heow's beginnings are very unclear even to this day. There's two leading stories that we'll explore today, and we'll start with the first of these. The first possibility for Heow's origin is the one that most people believe, probably because it's what actually happened, is that Heow was a gift. And while we all may see Heow as a gift, Heow was specifically a gift for Alan Booger Seaver, made for him by a relative. Heow would arrive on December 19th, 1986, in that magical basket we've all heard stories about that can fly all over the world. Heow would be made out of white cloth with blue flowers dotting his fur, piercing blue eyes, and of course that tail of his. And Heow would not be the only gift received, as Heow's uncle, Adrian Seaver, in a similar time frame would receive Rumple-Dunk, a monkey made of sock. While the second story may not be physically possible, we all want to believe it in our hearts. The story goes that Heow was one of 3 sons born to Kmart and Booger Seaver. His brothers Deow and Fleet, and his stepbrother, V.I.P. Owl. Heow would be born into a difficult childhood, as he would struggle with the wild success of his stepbrother, V.I.P., who had money, fame, and knowledge, and his hard-working, also successful brother, Deow. The good news for Heow, though, is he would always be more successful than his hillbilly, mountain backwoods farmer brother, Fleow. We'll start with Fleow, who spent most of his days out in the woods. We aren't really sure what he did there, but he sure learned how to wrestle, and he sure learned how to make moonshine. Now we'll discuss D.L.B. Cat, Heow's other full brother. Most would see him as the most successful of the 3 brothers, as Deow is now a multi-billionaire with his own company and an attorney at law. Deow spent most of his childhood doing silly things like studying and actually going to school. While Deow was not one to shy away from the party himself, Deow would spend most of his time doing things with his life. And lastly, that brings us to Heow's stepbrother, or half-brother, or we really don't know how he's related to Heow, but he somewhat is. V.I.P. Owl was wildly successful, even from a young age, became a child actor, a child star. He became one of much intrigue, one of much fame, one of much fortune, and Heow would be jealous of all the success that seemed to follow V.I.P. Owl everywhere he goes, even today, as V.I.P. Owl was known as the richest cat in the world, with a net worth of possibly trillions of dollars. Now that we've discussed the possible origin stories of Heow and met his brothers, we're now going to go and look at Heow's full family tree. Heow would be a direct descendant of Mama Buzz Seaver, who would go on to marry Winton Seaver. Winton Seaver had multiple brothers, but the most notable of these was Randall and Robert Seaver. Mama Buzz and Winton Seaver would go on to have 3 kids, Aaron Banana Peel Seaver, Alan Booger Seaver, and Adrian Seaver. Aaron Banana Peel Seaver would go on to marry Laurie Seaver, and Adrian would go on to marry Heather. And they would have 4 kids: Caleb, Emily, Andrew, and Micah. The third and youngest of Mama Buzz's sons was Alan Booger Seaver. He would go on to marry Kmart Seaver, and they would have 3 sons: Heow, Deow, and Fleow. Now, it gets a little fuzzy here. What exactly is Heow's relationship to VIP? But as most people would assume, is VIP Yow and Professor Yow are both possible stepbrothers of Heow. VIP Yow would go on to marry ADT Yow. Professor Yow would go on to marry Boo Yow. Later in life, Heow would marry She Yow, Deow would marry Sweet Tea Yow, and Fleow would marry Doo Yow. That's the direct family members of Heow. Now we go on to the many, many cousins throughout the world. We'll start with Ki Yow, who would go on to marry Kami Yow, Cheese Yow, who would go on to marry European, Jamaica Yow, who would go on to marry Banana Yow, Jalapeno Yow, who would go on to marry Ski Yow, and Yankee Yow, who would go on to marry Convict Yow. And while this may be confusing, we all know these cats as really good wrestlers. As a child, Heow would attend Churchill Elementary School. Heow was not known as a good student, but he was sure known as a popular one, as everyone loved Heow. Heow would play sports such as football, wrestling, basketball, and baseball. So, in order to flash back to what Heow may have been like during those days, we go to someone who grew up with Heow, as we'll now see what Rumpeldunk thought of growing up with Heow.
Growing up with Heow was very difficult, You're always under the shadow of Heow's supposed greatness. I dominated him in basketball and still do to this day, but, Heow was fun. We used to go hang out, go down to the lake. It was fun. I sure do miss Heow sometimes, I like to go around, fly with him on that magic basket. It was weird, growing up with a legend like that, especially being one myself, Heow. It's not just you. I have no jealousy issues at all, either.
As a child, Heow would go on to attend Churchill Middle School before attending Volunteer High School for 1 year before transferring to the Heow School for the Gifted and Athletically Talented. Heow would enjoy his time at this school as he would be alongside people of his peers, as Heow would become a standout star at basketball and baseball in particular, and not to mention his prowess on the wrestling team. So we asked Heow what his thoughts of growing up were. The high school years of Heow were very interesting. Heow would start many parties and continue his bathroom fight club at school. Even getting caught by the principal occasionally, Heow would buy them off. We're not really sure where Heow got all this money, but it is rumored he possibly stole some from VIP Yow's piggy bank. Heow would often get in trouble at school for his fight club and wild parties he'd throw, but Heow was always described as the life of the party, someone you always wanted to be around. A real fun guy, as some people have put it. As we go throughout this, we'd like to see what Heow had to say. So in the next segment, we'll see exactly what Heow thought about growing up.
Well, hey, I loved growing up as a kid. I had Fleow, I had a friend like Rumpeldunk, even if he's a little jealous. And occasionally I had Deow, I still kind of like him, VIP was there, but kind of jealous of him. But, he was a player as a kid, gambling on the school kickball games, beating people up in my bathroom fight club, It was just fun, Living with my mommy and my daddy, Booger and Kmart, just wasn't for me at the age of 16, I'd move to the big city. Go down there, get some women, start drinking around. That's just a life of hate. You can't tame the kitty.
Wow, what an interesting journey Heow's childhood and high school years have been. To end off today's documentary, we'd like to close with an interview with Heow himself about what the next stage would look like. As we prepare for next week's documentary, one of our interviewers sat down with Heow to find exactly what the recruiting process and what he looked for was like.
Well, hey, let's get this interview started,
So Heow, when looking for a college, what was the thing you looked for the most?
Well, when looking for a college, I didn't care about none of the academic stuff, It's a Professor Young Institute. I was out, none of the Ivy League. I really looked for a school where they had the prettiest women, near a brewery, like my beer, and whiskey. And then, of course, one where I didn't actually have to go to class, because, I don't do none of that learning stuff anymore,
So Heow, When declaring a major at the school, what programs were you focused on studying at these schools you were looking at?
Well, I was looking at Heow studies. Well, scholars that would let me take a bunch of fake classes and pay me a lot of money under the table, you know.
Wow, very interesting to say the least. So, going into this last chapter, what schools were you mainly looking at?
Well, of course, I was looking at the University of Tennessee, because go Vols, you know, they would have made me go to class, so I didn't like that. So I started looking real closely at Heow Tech, you know. It was right there in the city, and all the women I could want, and they would have paid me $5 million, you know.
So when choosing a sport, you know you played multiple in high school. What was the sport that you really wanted to play in college?
Well, I've always been a wrestling cat, you know. I always like beating people up, legally. So, it was either wrestling or football. I had to choose between those two, and one of them lets me get away with a whole lot more, so I chose wrestling, you know. Of course, I had to keep playing basketball, because he was from the streets of Heow. Well, then, of course, I ended up playing baseball just because I was bored, you know. If you don't go to class, what else are you going to do, you know?
Wow, very interesting. So we hope you enjoyed today's documentary and hope you'll join us next week as we go throughout the college years of Heow and how Heow got his beginnings as a wrestler, basketball player, baseball player, and even his political and business career. Thank you for watching Whiskey, Women, Wrestling, the Heow J. Cat Story.